Just a question. This is basically for the Best of Xena DVD set. And I understand that there are no Salmonius episodes in this entire set. Is that correct? None of my actual? Does anybody know? I saw. There are no Salmonius, I understand.
Sure. We're not positive.
Oh. Okay. Because my understanding was that there weren't. And it's infuriating. Thank you very much. I'm about to leave. Shit, you guys were supposed to say you're right, there aren't, so the exit makes sense. All right, fine, take two. As far as I know, according to the internet, there aren't, but that's fine. I was Salmonius, that is correct. He is an entrepreneur who moves society, everybody together, moves society forward in slow increments. I got a great deal on some swampland in Macedonia.
Not interested.
No, I don't mean for you to buy. You could be my partner, huh? With your knack for moving mountains and diverting rivers, we could make a killing just subdividing by 20 extra lots.
Not interested.
Think about it. You don't have to decide now. Without the Salmoniuses of the world, society just kind of like stays in the mud. The thing about Salmonius was he didn't read the fine print too carefully. So when there was like a wrist sundial that couldn't tell time, he naturally thought it would make a great fashion statement. And people, look at Paris Hilton for God, people need fashion statements all the time. So Salmonius might be confused as a con man, but in fact he is an entrepreneur who moves society forward. I'm glad we cleared that up. I think it was United, or maybe it was Pan Am, but they're bankrupt now. I did a movie, actually, with Martin Sheen for CBS called Out of the Darkness, where, ironically enough, since I'm like the comic relief in Hercules and Xena, I played a multiple serial killer known as David Berkowitz, the son of Sam. This was not the humorous version, actually, and I was being talked about for an Emmy for Best Supporting Actor. CBS and the production company actually put a lot of ads in the trade papers. So I came out here based on the reviews and the popularity of playing a serial killer. And then shortly thereafter, I got an agent in California, and I go back and forth bi-coastal, half the year in New York, half the year in California, until 1990, when I moved out here full-time. That was very ironic. As I recall, the specs for the casting for, at that time, a project called The Journey Begins, a Hercules movie as part of a Universal action wheel. The Journey Begins was a character called Waylon. And the original casting specs were a butler in the John Gielgud tradition of Arthur, a very proper sort of butler type who could get raunchy and kind of upsetting at times. They couldn't find anybody like that. Then they wanted a Louis Anderson character, a really fat character actor. And I think somebody suggested, if you cross John Gielgud with Louis Anderson, Robert Trebor is the name that most comes up in like the computer databanks. And so I said, well, I mean, John Gielgud won an Oscar for Arthur, and I don't know Louis Anderson's work that much, but sure, I'll give it a try. And the casting director, Ira Belgrade at that time, knew my work from theater in New York. So he brought me in, I believe, to read for Rob and himself, and that's it. I think Harley Coklis, the director, was in New Zealand scouting locations already. And in The Journey Begins, my character, Waylon, there were no scenes. There literally was a line on page 5, a line on page 8, a line on page 13. He appeared throughout the entire episode, popping in, saying his slavish line, and popping back out again. There were no scenes to audition with. So they said, why don't you improvise something? Now, as fans of the shows know, when you tell me to improvise something, you do it at your peril, or at your, reward, whatever you like. But so I improvised, and they said, we don't want the character to be gay. I said, it's okay, don't have to be gay. I can be fastidious and concerned and proper without being gay. Your Highness,
I'll take this to him.
As you wish.
Thank you, Waylon.
So I kind of pitched it between Eric Idle's characters in Monty Python and Phil Silver's as Bilko. So I tried to get a mixture of both of those in the character, and I forget what the improv was. I don't know if they have the tape anymore, but it was they liked it a lot. It was a lot of fun doing it, and I got a call a couple weeks later saying, come down to New Zealand and play. In the script, now once the script happened, they actually wrote scenes for me, and I actually had a chance to participate. I don't want to take writer's credit because I'm not a member of the WGA, and I could get into some serious legal trouble here. But I did work with Kevin and with Renee. There were things like in this. If you remember, she says, I say I'm not a eunuch. I'm a slave, and she says, what's the difference? That's where the scene ended. So I said, I can't just leave it at that. So if you remember, after she says,
what's the difference?
I'll tell you when you grow up.
I came up with a line. The camera comes back to me and say, well, I'll tell you when you grow up. Bang, close the door. So that was my idea. I came up with punchlines to certain of the scenes in, as it was called then, The Journey Begins. The thing about picking lint off of Kevin at one point, making him be I'm a good slave, I'm a fastidious slave. I came up with more dialogue there to elongate it a little bit. In those days, we actually did a lot of night shooting for the film. Ironically, the 5 features, of which I did 1, Universal didn't know if it was going to work, if the whole series was going to work, so they threw a lot of money at us. And I was actually paid more, to be perfectly honest, on a weekly basis than I was for the first 2 seasons of the show. And they gave us night shooting, they gave us more time to do. We didn't have to cover as many pages per day. And so it was kind of a wonderful, I'd work maybe 3 or 4 days a week, and they gave me a car, and I'd tour around New Zealand for the other 3 or 4 days a week for about 5.5 weeks. So it was really a terrific gig. I'll tell you about the very first time I saw her, which was before I worked with her. I was driven out to the set. Now, what you do is, of course, you leave Los Angeles. You lose a day. So if I leave on a Monday, I arrive on Wednesday evening. You sleep. You allow your clock to be readjusted. They brought me out to the set where I was just going to take a look. I met Kevin for the first time. I met Renee for the first time. She was hanging over the side of a rock quarry, upside down on a cross in, like, Indian paint. And I was saying, hi, Renee, this is Bob Trebor. Hi, Kevin. It was in the middle of this rock quarry in the middle of Auckland. I was saying, this is going to be a very interesting shoot. And she was very, she reminded me, I am reminded that I thought of her as like a terrific kid sister. She was a very spunky, feisty kid sister quality about her. Well, you know, it depends on what you mean by method style of acting. Is he serious or isn't he? It was a terrific kind of brother-sister relationship, I think. I was like an older brother, and she was like a little sister who was going to get herself in trouble if she didn't watch herself. And she was mouthing. Everybody called, hey, mouthy. She's got a lot of lip on her or something. I'm trying to calm her down. And then once I realized that she is the princess, then it gives me a kind of a moral center to fight. It was a terrific shoot. Now, interestingly, you know, I was cast in those before Lucy was. Did you know that? Yes, yes. They initially had Vanessa Angel playing Xena. I was on the 7th episode as Darkness Falls, with Lucy, ironically, playing Lila.
You ever thought about getting an agent?
What's an agent?
You know, someone to find you work. Make sure you get paid for all your toil and trouble.
It's not work to me, Salmonius. I enjoy helping people. Besides, payment is never part of the deal.
See, that's why you need me. I could get you a contract for big dinars.
Not interested.
I'm just thinking of your future. Suppose you want to get out of the hero business, you know, open up a souvenir shop, I know, not interested.
I bet I know what interests you.
And what's that?
Pretty things? Come, I'll show you the best view in all of Nespa. Oh, come on. I won't bite.
And I was Salmonius. It was my second Salmonius episode. Before I left New Zealand, which would have been November of '94, Eric Grundeman said, we want you to be in 2 episodes, the final 2 episodes of this season, which are part of something called the Xena trilogy. Are you available in January? See, some people, I know some people are saying, Bob, what happened to you in the show? Were you fired? I was never hired as a series regular. They always asked me about my availability. because I was working on other projects as well, I put a lot of attention and time commitment into If they wanted me, I wanted to make sure I was available for them. But they said, yes, I am available in '95 in January. I would be coming down the second week of January through like the first week of February, which would be shooting these 2 episodes back to back. It was in December that Rob Tapert took me to lunch at the Ca del Sol restaurant on Universal Studios property. And he said, we love your work and so forth, and you're going to be in these 2 episodes called the Xena Trilogy. Do you have any ideas who might play this character, Xena? We just lost the actress playing the part. And I'd read the beat sheet or the outline of the first episode, this fierce warrior woman. And I just worked with Lucy, of course, in November, so I didn't think they would necessarily bring her back so soon from episode 7 to, I think, The Warrior Princess was episode 11, or 10, actually, because it was Warrior Princess, then it was Gladiator, then 12 and 13 were The Gauntlet and Unchained Heart. So are you going to bring an actress back? So it didn't even occur to me to think of Lucy. I thought of a couple actresses from Baywatch, ironically, who I worked with when it was on NBC, a woman named Holly Gagne and somebody else. And Tapert and I threw some things back and forth. And then lo and behold, I come on the set, and there's Lucy, who I just worked with a month and a half earlier. Saying, oh, you're Xena. Oh, terrific. That's wonderful. And we had a sense of play about that also. Since I'd worked with her before, the whole thing of cracking the walnuts and thinking of the Xena thing, there was a lot of playfulness between our characters. As an American actor, a Screen Actors Guild actor, they're required to give you a private dressing room. Normally, I'm a co-star, I'm not a huge name. They give a honey wagon a private room within a whole fleet of rooms on the side of a trailer. They didn't have those in New Zealand, so each had separate campers. Now Lucy, though she was a main guest star in that episode, New Zealand Equity doesn't have the same rules. They all change in the back of the makeup trailer. There's a little section in the back of the makeup and wardrobe trailer. So it was raining badly, as believe it or not, it does in New Zealand from time to time. That's why it's so green. And of course, the Maori name is Aotearoa, which means the land of the long white cloud, which often precipitates. So it was raining like hell, and she was out there. Apparently, she was out in the rain. There were 3 or 4 other actors changing, and I said, Lucy, would you like to come in, you know? And I don't know if she thought I was trying to make a pass at her or anything, but she said, no, I think I'm supposed to wait here outside. And in fact, they did let her inside to change into her Lila costume at that point. But from what I understand, once she started doing Xena, she was allowed to have her own dressing room. Even though at that point she wasn't a SAG actor, but they were kind enough to give her just a tiny little kind of like a floating porta potty as a dressing room, and she was allowed to maneuver in there, and she was quite gracious about it, actually. What do you mean strange? Strange by whose standards? No, not by many of the fans either, from what I gather. No, they had a likeness apparently for seeing me in drag because I did a much better drag episode with Bruce Campbell in Men in Pink, where they really fitted me out nice. This thing, they found some schmata from a used bric-a-brac store in New Zealand and put it over me. All the men in town were being killed. So Salmonius, with his tremendous daring do and courage, dresses as a woman to avoid being caught. And I have a veil to cover the beard and so forth, and I stuffed my, bazoom here with rags that I could later cry into. That is the first time that we see Salmonius meeting Xena, and I'm very grateful and eternally grateful to her for not killing me on the spot.
Wow, what have we got here?
No. I work in the circus. Please don't kill me, please, I beg you.
Give me one good reason.
It would be very unpleasant for me. We haven't even been introduced. My mother will cry.
Take him away.
Wait a minute. I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm a traveling salesman. I can get you a great deal on some clay dinnerware. I got this walnut utensil.
Kill him.
Hold it. You're very quick to kill him. Wait a second, please. I know
because her henchmen want her to do that. And she says, no, you amuse me. Like I'm the court jester, so she gives me chicken and feeds me stuff, and that encourages goodwill towards Xena.
Be like a tax collector. Tell people you're doing it for their own good.
You know, for such a wretched little man, you are mildly entertaining. Tell me more.
So when Kevin says she's the worst bitch in the world, I say, wait a second, she's not as bad as you think. And I actually, in a sense, Salmoneus does broker a peace between Xena and Hercules. And I know the fans have recognized that and appreciate that. What did I improvise? I improvised a theme song, since nobody has heard the question that was put to me, because it's an interesting stream of consciousness. Yes, I improvised a theme song at the last moment, and often they do that to me, or maybe they knew I could do it, and they just, at the end of the day, with only like one shot left, they'd say, okay, Bob, do what you want, because sometimes the pressure would make it come out funny or something. As she's about to, in the persuasion to keep her from killing me, I try to be her advance man, her PR person. And she says, I prefer to have my relations private. And it's very funny, Xena. But I say, wait a second, you need a theme song. Like every good campaigner has a theme song. I mean, it's like, you know, Eisenhower had one, and Kennedy had one, and Nixon had one, and Bush was, you know. But so there, literally the walnuts were right there, and in tribute to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the famous coconut sequence, because they couldn't afford horses, so a guy clopped coconuts together to make the clip-clopping of the horses. I clopped the walnuts together and went, Xena, coming to your town, Xena, don't you wear a frown.
Xena, coming to your town. Xena, don't you wear a frown. Don't talk about destruction. Talk about collateral damage.
And my original theme, again, this was literally off the cuff. This was not in table read. This came at the last moment. My original one was, and I don't know if you can put this in the tape because of copyright purposes, was Xena, Xena, coming to your town. Xena, Xena, don't you wear a frown. And then George Lyle, our first idea, said, hold it. That is a theme song from a TV series in the 1950s. It was Robin Hood. Robin Hood, Robin Hood, riding through the glen. I wasn't even hardly alive. Which camera's on now? Oh, I wasn't even alive in the 1950s. But somehow I channeled that, and the Xena thing kind of worked, so I had to come up with something else at the last moment. George Lyle was very, and it's his job. I often improvise some stuff, and he said, no, you can't use that. In Les Contemptibles, the French episode in Hercules, at one point I am slicing and dicing, as Salmoneus doesn't usually do, with an épée, the enemy, and I'm going, Alouette, gentille alouette, alouette, je te plumerai. And Lyle, the same first AD, and a really terrific guy, I like George a lot. He said, hold it, is there a copyright to that melody? Alouette, gentille alouette? Bob, I don't want to have a problem with this. Is there a copyright? Luckily, we had a French expert saying, it's a children's nursery rhyme. It's like the same copyright as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. There's no copyright to the melody. He can use it. So I said, okay. But he did get me on the Robin Hood theme song, so I had to change the theme of the Xena public relations song. And also, it was also my line, apropos stuff I make up. The line was written, how can I address you? But I did come up with staring at a particular part of her anatomy.
Don't stop amusing me now.
No, Your Highness, Your Worship, what is your titular, how do you like to be undressed? Addressed?
No, what is your titular, how shall I address you? So I just added little Phillips and filigrees here and there. Oh, proud warrioress. Yes, that was my line as well, actually. Oh, proud warrioress. Oh, Philip Morris Johnny. Yeah, that was not written. Because I thought it would be respectful, and Darfus and her people are causing her. I don't know if it's Darfus in that episode. It's a different episode. I forget who the bad guy is. Her chief lieutenant in the Gauntlet, who wants me dead, and who wants women and children dead, and wants everybody dead except him and Xena. But I try to prevail upon her to think of me as a possible advisor against these bad advisors that she has on her flank.
Oh, proud warrioress! Can I talk to you for a moment?
About what?
And then I used it again in The Greater Good, and Steve Sears was generous enough to let me use that as I'm cradling her body. Proud warrioress, I will miss you. Because she did keep me alive, and she had a bad reputation. She could have easily killed me, and then I wouldn't have appeared in any Xena episodes. And if I were dead, how could I appear in Hercules? So, you know, what the hell? I was there for the gauntlet scene by George, and I'll tell you, at that point I was like 26 years in this business, right? I worked with Roland Emmerich in Universal Soldier. I worked on a thing called My Demon Lover. I've done some films where there's been some violence and some. The gauntlet sequence was the most violent, most disturbing sequence I had ever witnessed as an actor. And there are shots of me in close-up that don't take a lot of acting. I mean, I'm responding. I know Lucy was not really being hurt, but the gouges and the smashes and the bruises and the whole thing. And if we remember in Los Angeles, there was a high school, I believe in Lakewood, that had an event called Wilding, where teenage guys would beat up women on the playground at the same time that this was being shot. And I said to the first AD, there is no way in hell this is being shown this way. No way. Even if there weren't the political context of women young girls being assaulted by kids as a lark, as a joke, to show their machismo. There is no way this is going to be allowed. And in fact, it was substantially cut down. No, Salmoneus is not a coward. He is not a coward, nor is he a hero. He is an entrepreneur who moves society forward in slow increments. Yeah, that was a funny scene, because I'm very loquacious. I'm constantly running off at the mouth, because it's a sales spiel and it's funny and so forth. The actual dialogue written for that scene in the cave was, and not wanting to be overly offensive, it was almost like Butterfly McQueen in Gone with the Wind. Oh my God, I don't know what to do! I can't do anything! We all gonna die! We're gonna die! Now, I don't know if people really say that in real life. We're gonna die, help me, we're gonna die. And I thought with the producer's agreement and the director's agreement and Kevin's agreement, it would be more startling to see this very loquacious, very verbal, funny guy say nothing. Almost like catatonia. Almost like, and that had a real kind of, it's not cowardice, it's a kind of, I mean, people who actually are real heroes in real life, of which Salmoneus is not one, can have something seize them and stuff, and that's why they literally have to be shaken or slapped or saying, get out of here, get out of it now, stop it, stop it. That's why cops, God forbid, in tragedies like 9/11, people are just frozen. A cop has to scream at you, 9/11 meaning the tragedy at the World Trade Center. Get the hell out of here now, move it, move it, move it, move it. You need something to shake you out of that. I think that's a more human dynamic than saying, oh my God, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. It wasn't so much cowardice, because as we see later on, I mean, Salmoneus in that same episode steps up. He goes into the den of the, and he helps clop the guys over the head. He fights. He's not a coward. He's an average guy. As I've said in some interviews, Salmoneus is neither a farmer nor a fighter. He lives by his wits, like most people do. Most people don't grow their own food. Most people can't, in a dire situation, save their life. They rely on the legal institutions, or they rely on a hero, like Xena or like Hercules, to save them. So I think certainly more than LAWLESS, maybe even more than Joxer, because Joxer really thinks he's a hero and wants to be a fighter. Salmoneus said, wait a minute, we got to fight? You handle it, I'll just sit back. That's not cowardice, that's intelligence. That's what a person should do, unless they have an Uzi or some kind of grenade that can take care of the situation immediately. But I think of Salmoneus as being the average guy in the audience, the average person in the audience watching the shows. Neither a hero nor a coward, a person trying to get by as best he can by his wits, and does what he needs to. And to incur the good favor and good opinion of Xena and Hercules, will occasionally step up and do an heroic act, because they prey upon his conscience. And Salmoneus does have a conscience. The actual Xena series, yes. The Black Wolf. Now, are your fans aware that the first season of Xena was actually shot in Super 16, as opposed to 35? For people who don't know, 35 millimeter is the standard in movie theaters. Most TV shows shoot either in 35 millimeter or on tape. They didn't know if Xena was going to work. And Universal was not willing to commit a full season of 35 millimeter. It's also more expensive to edit. It's more expensive to... A 16 millimeter camera is lighter, which is why a lot of Xena's first... You can do a lot of swish pans, a lot of camera work, aside from Steadicam work. That's a lot lighter and faster. And ironically, I'd often do a Hercules episode and a Xena episode during the same period of time I was there. The Xena directors who I'd worked with on Hercules would often say to me, Bob, could you invite us to the Xena lunch could you invite us to the Hercules lunch because the Xena catering is not as good as Hercules at this point. So for the first season, Universal was a little tentative whether Xena would work or not. Obviously, once the fan mail and the ratings came in, they moved to 35 millimeter and extremely good catering. Yes, but the Black Bolt, my first episode on Xena. She had epaulets, didn't she? On Hercules.
Are you a biographer or a bad comedian? Or have you dreamed up some other get-rich-quick scheme?
How about Love Slave? I'm versatile.
So I noticed there were no epaulets. And I don't know, she may have played it with a little, on the Hercules trilogy, there may have been a little more edge, a little more anger, especially at Hercules, until the last part of Unchained Heart, when they become allies. But I think the edge was taken down and her hair was taken up. I don't know. Her hair was made darker and the epaulets were lost. I didn't notice that much difference. And again, you got to remember, the crews, the makeup crews, the ADs were basically interchangeable for much of the time. So it did seem more, except for the catering, more or less moving from one to the other seemed fairly natural. Not a big change. The first time I was with the tomatoes. You're gonna bring up the tomatoes, huh? You don't know about the tomatoes, handling the tomatoes.
Huh? Hey, back off! You know, you wouldn't be in here in the first place if you'd kept your hands off my tomatoes.
I can explain that.
The handling of the tomatoes line actually referred to that day's lunch. It was primarily vegetarian, and there was a tremendous amount of tomato product on the set. It had nothing to do with female mammary glands. People just read into things in this episode. I don't know what they're referring to. Handling tomatoes was purely an agricultural reference. Now, I remember improvising a line. That line was written, if he'd only kept his hands off my tomatoes. But when I looked to Xena, because of course I know Xena before I know Gabrielle from the trilogy, and Xena said, she's the little miss. I say, she got me into this trouble.
That's the little Miss Innocent who had me thrown in here in the first place.
She's my friend.
She's your friend? She's your friend? You have a friend?
And I did improvise the line, your friend? You have a friend? So that was mine. And also, I think it was the episode that, when I first see Xena when I'm in jail, those boots, that leather.
Those legs. Xena!
The original line was, because I recognize Xena by her legs, the original line that I improvised that they liked, that they did a couple takes of.
Those boots. That leather.
Those thighs. Xena! Now, I guess Xena was trying for a good housekeeping seal of approval, and they felt thighs was too suggestive, although it actually is the portion of the anatomy between the knees and the torso. And my eyes were naturally, I wasn't trying to be salacious, it was just a natural progression. So I think we changed it to those boots, that leather, those legs, Xena, which I thought was watering it down somewhat. Oh, yes, the greater good, the greater good. Well, there were two scenes, in fact. There was a scenette and a whole scene. The scenette was, Xena, as we recall, is in dire straits. Her life forces are draining away. And I have to find an implement to kill a chicken. And Gabrielle or Xena says to me, why don't you try the breast dagger? Now, it's called a breast dagger for a reason. See, people think Salmonius is salacious or a sleazeball, absolutely without foundation. Where would you think a breast dagger would be held? In the back pocket, of course. A breast dagger, one would think, would be between the breasts. And in fact, if you look at the filigree of the shape of the handle, it perfectly fits into the cleavage. Not mine, but a woman's, certainly Xena's. And so as I start to reach for the breast dagger, where one would think a breast dagger would be, Xena gives me this really hard look saying, it's on the table.
Chicken soup! You need some of my patented chicken soup. Soup is good food. Trust Salmonius. Now, there are a lot of chickens around here. All I need is a knife.
Take my breast dagger. My breast dagger is on the table.
Uh-huh. Perhaps a name change for that particular apparatus would be in order, you think? Yeah.
Okay, I can go to the table. It seemed kind of harsh. Most people think a breast dagger would be called, or as opposed to a back pocket dagger. But, so that part was cut. Because along with the thighs, any mention of breast or thighs would get us an R rating. And the whole purpose was to try to cure Xena by making chicken soup. Now, Salmonius is a polytheist, of course, because Judaism does not occur until many centuries after the era of the Greco-Roman era that Xena and Hercules takes place in. But he knows chicken soup is a cure-all because he's about his descendants will become Jews and chicken soup is Jewish penicillin. So he goes to try to kill a chicken with the breast dagger that was on the table. Of course, it could have been called a table dagger, but it wasn't. And he goes for it, and we actually shot about 3/4 of a day my going after chickens, feathers flying up, live, not animatronic chickens, real chickens, going after them. I didn't actually kill them, but there were 3 or 4 that knocked me on my butt, going back and forth, trying to get the chicken. You see at the last shot, I bring her a piping bowl of chicken soup, meaning that I was successful in killing the chicken, boning it and defeathering it, cooking it, and making delicious soup out of it. All of that was cut. Not for quality, but because the episode was running long. But it's a shame that they can't get I actually have a copy of it, but it has the time code and it doesn't look good. It's a shame they can't clean it up and release it, because those were terrific scenes.
Contribution will not be forgotten.
I think she's dead. I gave her, and that was my idea also, to actually check for vital signs. To actually check for the breath, check for the pulse, check for the carotid artery. I mean, Salmonius doesn't know medicine, but is she, and all vital signs are dead. She's dead weight in my hands. I think she is dead. I have to reveal to Gabrielle very quietly and for both of us, I think it's a terrific scene, that she's dead. Wait a second, we got to hold a funeral here.
Xena. This is a trick, right? Come on. Proud warrioress.
And it's that realization, and going back to the gauntlet, she saved my life, she's become a better person, she and Hercules are now allies, she's trying to serve the greater good. As a tribute to her, as a memorial to her, against my better instincts, I've got to do what's right. I did a shabby thing selling armor to a nervous, angry guy that happened to melt in the rain. Okay, my bad. I guess I got to step up and, offer myself, because it's the right thing to do. Here she comes, Miss Amphipolis. I believe this is the first show that Lucy did after she came back after her accident, which we remember on the Jay Leno show, I believe. Man, that was tough. I sent her a book. I think she had her pelvis cracked in a couple places. I believe the horse, they got 2 good takes, and then somebody said, oh, let's go for one more. There's a lesson for everybody about going for one more. This was the first episode that she did when she came back, and she looked terrific, and she was moving quite stunningly. She puts on the blonde wig and she's able to twirl and swirl and fight, and she's terrific. Yeah. I don't think they had to compensate at all. I think she was back to form. I don't think there's any. I mean, I don't know. I mean, she had stunt doubles doing flips and backflips off the horses anyway, so she didn't do those. But maybe there was a little less fighting on her. But I can't think of anything. I think she was back to form. Yeah.
Now I want some straight answers.
Have you got the wrong girl? Okay, I was just kidding. Where's your sense of humor?
Well, he's terrific, and he's a professional female impersonator, and he's invested in himself. He has had cheekbone implants, I believe. He's had hips. He's had skeletal adjustments to make himself more feminine looking, and he was absolutely terrific.
Arrest the warrior princess!
Honey, I'm no princess. I'm a queen.
I mean, he was stunningly attractive. Not that he's my type. And as I've said publicly, I did Miss Amphipolis, and then a year later I did Men in Pink. And after having to be a transvestite, which camera's on? Where are we? Can't tell. All right, what the hell? This one over here. After being a transvestite for a week and a half, being put in high heels, being put in a waist cincher, being put with... It cured me of any desire to be a transvestite. It's damn hard work. And I admire Jeff Gann even more retroactively, having played a transvestite, that a guy could actually do that as a living, because it's sheer hell. The name of the episode, my last episode on Xena, unless there happens to be a movie, which some people think is in the offing, and it may well be. But at this point, it was my last episode on Xena, was Deja Vu All Over Again, directed by Renee O'Connor. And those of you who are really observant, notice I have the same hair color that I had in Deja Vu All Over Again.
You still haven't lost it, Xena.
It makes me look more youthful. And in this town, that counts. Renee O'Connor was the director, her first time directing. She was terrific. I mean, to be honest, it was a bottle show. In other words, there were other episodes, and she only had 4 days to shoot. And she was learning on the job, and I think she admits that. We tended to go over several days because she had to get extra shots in and so forth. And it's a tough show. It's a tough show getting everything in during the time allotted. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I wish I had more to do with the late Kevin Smith, considering I morph into him.
And you're as evil as ever, Aries.
Kevin was a great guy, terrific guy. I ironically had more to... I watched him play Othello for Michael Hurst at the Watershed Theater. And it was just... He'd never done Shakespeare before, and Othello's a real burdensome, difficult part. And he pulled it off and was terrific, was just wonderful. And Kevin and I were at a convention in Washington, D.C. that, it took place in '95, I think. I didn't have a lot to do. I mean, we'd chat during lunch and so forth, but it was an honor becoming Kevin Smith in that episode. And who'd have thunk it? Yes! This is the first time that Ted Raimi and Robert Trebor... No, actually, it wasn't. In Hercules, yes, Virginia, there is a Hercules. And for those of you who haven't joined us yet, we were at different characters. I was Holland's Pfoffer, and he was one of the writers. So this was not actually the first episode where Ted and I worked. It was the first episode on Xena where Ted and I worked. But it wasn't as salmonious and jocular, and I think both of us kind of regret that. I know the powers that be felt you can't have two sidekicks, that it's going to divert the audience's attention. I think the fans would have loved it. I think Ted and I would have loved it like crazy. But sadly, it never happened. And Ted and I, in a sense, didn't really have any scenes together, per se, in Deja Vu.
Very good. You still haven't lost it, Xena.
And you're as evil as ever, Aries.
We had one scene together. We kind of had a scene, a semi-scene, a half a scene. But it wasn't a chance to really work. We didn't really have a chance to work together. We worked together more in London at a convention. We were goofing. I was talking about Salmones, and Ted came in with what I may say was rather a poor Scottish accent, saying, "Oh, who's that fellow up there?" I'm doing a much better accent than he did, may I say. And it's a guy in a beard. Bruce and Ted came in fake beards. Saying, "What is this? It's some kind of science fiction convention? What's going on? Who is that fellow? I've never seen him before. What's going on?" And we were, "Okay, guards, hose those people down if you would, please. They're causing a riot. And look, if you have to put them in the jail for," and I knew exactly who they were. We had more fun with each other at that convention than we ever had a chance to in front of the camera. It's kind of a shame. Well, ironically, and it's so funny, I'd like to just bring this into frame, if I might. Let me just focus it even more. This is a book that I wrote that explains what happened to Salmoneus, because I was kind of evaporated off both shows in 1999. Although they did ask me, "Are you available for such and such an episode?" I was in some beat sheets and some plot points that never materialized. But I wrote a book that because Salmoneus never was killed off, he was able to live forever in various incarnations. Like deja vu all over again, because that may have given me the inspiration about New Ageism and reincarnation and so forth. And this explains that Salmoneus was the world's foremost authority on love and money. And everything that Dear Abby and Dr. Laura know about their craft, they learned from Salmoneus. If you find she's a real person, I will funnel your money back to you, minus a commission, a modest commission. And Elvis Presley, Stanley Kubrick asked Salmoneus for advice. Stanley Kubrick, as a young man, very few people know this, asked Salmoneus, saying, I want to make movies. I want to make one movie a year. I'm very ambitious, and I've got a tremendous amount of internal momentum. And Salmoneus said, "Hold on, young man. One movie a year is too much. You take your time. Germinate. Marinate an idea. Take your time before you..." And so that's why he only made a film like once a decade, because of Salmoneus' advice. Monty Python asked Salmoneus for advice. They were originally called Monty Pork Rind. And Salmoneus said, "Pork rind, it's not kosher. You're going to be dismissing a whole bunch of people. Call yourselves Python, a snake." That kind of an oily... So Salmoneus was able to give a lot of people advice, and most of the time he got nothing out of it. But I know a lot of fans love the book. You can pick this up. If you see me on the street, I have several in my trunk. And I'm happy to let you, get a bargain on it. I'll sign it for you. There's a 10th anniversary edition coming out. The 10th anniversary edition will say 10th anniversary edition on the cover. There are no changes. It's only that sticker that makes it the 10th anniversary edition, because that's the kind of thing Salmoneus would do. Yeah, this explains what happened to Salmoneus after the shows ended, essentially. And did you want to ask about what I'm currently doing? What are we up to? Well, I'm open for offers.